Phenomenology helps us move beyond the idea that we can know the world intellectually. And understanding the world is an act of, intellectualism where we think things through, and that there is one objective truth that we can come to if we've thought through it well enough. And in order to demonstrate it, I like to use a symbol to unpack, aspects of it that we take for granted, but that anthropologists, we see. We just always see them. It's like in The Matrix when Neo was like seeing the world, and then all of a sudden he sees the world in these binary codes. Anthropologists see the world symbolically, and we see rituals where people just are like, I don't know, I'm just doing stuff. We see symbols where people are like, I don't know, that's just a thing. And we see structures where that hold the meaning together of these rituals and symbols. And the example I like to use is of this can. So, when I'm working with people, I often say, well, what's this? And the answer that they usually give me is, that's a can. That's a pretty objective kind of thing, right? We can even extend that to go, that's a Coke can. That's quite an objective bit of information there. It's a 375 ml Coke can. We can also say who it's made by. That's sort of objective information. That's objective knowledge. But there's other forms of knowledge that we can access as well. There's subjective knowledge. So, for example, I might ask individuals in the room, like, what does this can mean to you? And they can connect a story to that. They can connect their story to that in a way that suggests that this can has deep symbolic meaning beyond just the cokeness and the redness and the canness of it, right? For some people, it's like, that reminds me of summers when I was living in the Central Coast, eating fish and chips on the beach. And I always used to have a can of Coke. For some people, it might be, that reminds me of a hangover, or that particular hangover I had after that one night where I did that one thing that I swear I will never do again. Or for some people, it's like, that reminds me of sugar. That reminds me of toxins. And so this one objective thing has many different subjective stories attached to it. And we can access those subjective stories by getting people to see what this thing symbolizes. And the important thing is that, like, the objective information is important, but so too is the subjective information as well. Now, we do these activities in our workshops where we do a thing with the can. We do a check-in and we get everybody to shake the can up. And then what happens then is that the can has a social meaning. It means something to the group that has not meant that no other group has experienced before. And so the can has an objective bit of information. It has subjective stories associated with it. It has a social story associated with it as well. But that is kind of unique to that particular social group that has experienced this can in a particular way. You might do a check-in where you get people to say something, where they hold the can and they say something like, well, what are your hopes? And what that can represent, as well as the objective truth of it being a can, as well as the subjective truth of it being connected to individual stories, has now got a social truth of being the thing that holds or contains their hopes, for example. And that symbolic meaning goes deeper. And then we might ask them, what does your body tell you when you see this can now? And for some people, it might be, a reversion to the sugar, or like a longing for those days gone by, or after they've been to our workshops, every time they see a can, it might be a sense of hope that comes through their body, right? And so it has deep layers of signification that we can unpack when we connect with, the objective, the subjective, the social, and the embodied knowledge that occurs when we interact with these symbols that live in the world. And the beauty of that is that as an anthropologist, it means that I can rock up into a space and I have loads of different, loads of data that I can draw on to communicate what's happening in a culture. And I can, I'm able to communicate that very quickly because of my education and practice and my kind of my apprenticeship in the field. But we can teach people how to do that as well.